talk about venture meets growth. The same as we talk about every single week, but we just talk about it from a different perspective. And as you know, we always bring in a great founder, somebody who's in our portfolio, somebody that we've invested in, somebody who's doing amazing. They're growing at like 200% growth. You all know because you are aficionados of venture growth companies that any company that's growing at 100, 200, 300% growth on a regular basis, even with some breaks in the middle, those companies are on trajectory for unicorn status. And I want to give you a phrase this morning which I heard a while back, but I like it a lot, and it's extremely relevant to SaaS companies, software as a service companies that are pushing hard and hard and hard and hard and hard, and suddenly they have a breakthrough, and it's a term called escape velocity. And I don't know how much it's used in venture, but I know that I like it very, 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 very much. And I like using it a lot because it's when you know you have it. Because it's very seldom that a company wakes up in the morning, starts, grows, gets better, grows, gets better, grows, gets better, grows. Okay. What normally happens is this: I, or one of our colleagues, or one of our founders have this great idea. And we're like, hey, we're going to change the world with this widget. And this widget could be a drink, it could be an accelerator, it could be a SaaS company, it could be anything at all. But we see a problem in the world that has to be fixed. Now, inside our mind, it is telling us that we have the perfect product already. We've worked it out. This is the problem, this is the solution. It's extremely linear. All we have to do is get this solution to the market as quickly as possible and we will win. But it doesn't work like that. The way it really works is the chances of us having a proper, perfect product and company are slim to zero. Like we don't, how would we know? We haven't even engaged with the customers with the product yet. And so it takes time, and we have to go through this initial lovable product because it's something which is loved by us, and we want to make sure that the consumer loves it at the other end to try and get this product all the way to that Horizon 3 product. And there's a moment in the middle where the company hits escape velocity. And escape velocity is when you've been building through your domain awareness to domain authority to domain domination. You're building through your lovable products to try and get to your Horizon 3 product. You're working with your customers. You're beating through your third-party providers. You're trying to get your resellers to believe and to trust that your product is something that's going to help them and not get them into trouble. And then a moment comes. And that moment is escape velocity. And escape velocity is an awesome thing because it's not just that like other people realize the thing that you kind of knew at the beginning. It's that other people realize the thing that you guessed at the beginning, but you also know now. It's when you realize I have done enough hours. Some people look at this as the 10,000 hour reasoning, but I've done enough hours. I've spoken to enough customers. I know enough to know that I am hitting escape velocity now. And it is singularly the most exciting time that a company will ever have. And so I am going to bring on Mr. Ben Stein from Staple, who I believe we had the great fortune. I had the great fortune, but by extension, Expert Dojo had the great fortune of investing in Ben a little while back. I loved him. My reasoning for investing was very simple. He was dealing with a very big problem, such a big problem actually that at that time it was so difficult to know where it would go and what would happen with it. But I knew he was brilliant. I knew that his domain expertise was phenomenal. I knew his thesis was really good. But actually, leaving all of that aside, I knew he was an executor. So for me, he was a stone cold killer. Now, what I also knew was that it would take time to get to that escape velocity because he needed to have all of this engagement with the early stage company. So less about me, more about him. I'm going to bring Ben on and we're going to talk a little bit about how he's grown the company from the start. We'll talk about the funding rounds he's had. We'll talk about building the trust, building the belief, getting him to this stage. And Ben will try and share as many tactics as he possibly can with founders who are watching so that you can have a little bit of an easier path. And for investors who are watching, I don't even know you can still get into his round, but at least you can get in the waiting list for the next one. Ben, come on in.
Hey, Brian. Good morning.
Let's see if we can get you. There he is.
Hey, morning. You can hear me okay?
Good morning. Yeah. Was that a good introduction? Was it appropriate?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was. Stone Cold Killer. I haven't been called that before. I'll take it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Where are you sitting today? You in Singapore?
I've just come back to Singapore via the UK. So there was London Tech Week there a couple of weeks ago. I just came back last week, so I'm in Singapore right now.
Wonderful. And so look, tell us all about Staple. I want to know if we can start. Let's start here. Let's go at the beginning. As I said, the objective of this is that people, you're growing. Like, I know you're going to hit $1 million a month in revenue. I feel you're going to hit $3 million a month in revenue. I'm kind of feel great about the fact that you'll probably hit $5 to $10 million a month in revenue. Like, I feel you're on the trajectory. I believe you've hit growth velocity. And so we're going to talk about growth philosophy, and we're going to talk about, and growth philosophy, I think, is like almost like a feeling that you have first, and then it gets reverberated around the years. But before we get to all that fun stuff, share with people the genesis of Staple and kind of what it's turned into today, the value that it brings customers, and then we'll dig into how you got it started and the growth.
Sure. So Staple is an AI document processing and indexation company. So essentially, we ingest all sorts of documents, read, interpret, translate, extract, and index the data from those documents. When I say documents, I mean that in the broadest possible sense. It could be traditional scanned, old school photographs coming in from paper documents, all the way through to your native PDFs, Excel files, or even things like XML and e-invoice documents. So the entire gamut of documents, any kind of file that businesses use to communicate with one another. So we're all about relieving that friction in B2B communication. This sprang out of problems that I experienced in my career. I worked as a consultant and in one of the big four. I worked as a CFO. I saw this all the time in terms of real inefficiencies and delays in getting this information into reporting systems or other systems to get up-to-date, accurate data at any time. And one of the things that we do a little bit differently is that we really focus on supporting global organizations. We support over 200 languages. We can do this all around the world. We currently have users in 56 countries. So if you are really looking for a single solution to support back office, middle office operations and that entire data processing workflow, we're a good fit for that.
Nice. And Ben, we're getting a little bit of a lag, and we're going to try and make it work, okay? But okay. I might jump in a few times in the meantime, just if it keeps on going. And so, look, we get the idea. The problem that, like most people, I like that. Thank you, Maddie. For most folks, they don't understand the challenges that large amounts of information have actually brought to the world. Like it seemed like it was really good. We're like, oh my God, we've got Google. Oh my gosh, we've got the cloud. Oh my gosh, we've got these other things. All of this information is going to come through. We are going to be so smart. And that's not true. We are going to be so confused. We are so confused because there's all this data. And if you can imagine like a large Fortune 500 organization, they are dying under like the mountain of just bips and dots and data and all the stuff that's coming through. So Ben saw that, and Ben's like, hey, I worked in these large consultancies. They're charging millions of dollars to manually work through all of this kind of stuff here. I think I'm going to build a digital solution to be able to do this. And so the first problem that you have to have had is not that this is not a big solution. It's actually describing how you can separate yourself from everybody else in the provision of the solution and then getting the trust of the large organizations. Now, before we go through this, Share with everybody a little bit about where you are right now. You've just oversubscribed your round, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we recently closed a round. It was oversubscribed. We had uh, a lot of demand to get into this round. We are an AI company. We are a B2B enterprise SaaS company. It's counter-cyclical in that, despite the market conditions, we still do quite well in terms of acquisition of customers. So it was quite a popular round. We are looking to probably raise again sometime next year, so that's not that far away. But given the time it takes to close rounds these days, I think we'd be open to conversations, from now onwards.
Yeah, and look, but I'm going to fight you a bit on this. I know tons of companies in AI, and I know tons of companies that are in SaaS, and none of them are raising money. Tons, 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 tons. They're not raising money. Why are they not raising money? Because they're not driving revenue and they're not driving growth. And even what 3 weeks ago, which I by the way, this is maybe my favorite thing to happen at Expert Dojo. But one of our other companies who closed a really big contract like that, we facilitated that introduction between you and them, and that drove another couple of $100,000, which is going to go through the organization too. And so you're driving revenue. Like that's the real thing here. What you did and what you realized at the beginning, and I know because you and I have had plenty of conversations about this, is that you recognized corporate B2B enterprise is kind of a beautiful thing and it's a nightmare. It's a beautiful thing because if you get companies in, you keep them for a long time, right? You got long cycles of retention, but you also have long sales cycles to get those folks through. And so can you talk to, I mean, because now we have the revenue is going to hit a couple of million this year. I don't think that's a problem to say to folks. You're going to keep on driving that up. Can you talk about like some of the tactics specifically that you did at the beginning to gain the trust of the customers that actually started to come on board with you?
Mm. So we made a lot of mistakes early on, but those mistakes were valuable learning experiences. We started out, we weren't always an enterprise company. We initially started selling to small businesses, startups, quickly realized that was quite challenging, particularly in this part of the world. I can talk a little bit more about why. But
Is it just they have no money? Is it just because they're poor, because startups are poor?
Yeah, it is. It is the lack of budget, and we had the double whammy of COVID around that time. So we were kind of forced to reevaluate, pivot, and refocus on the enterprise end of the market. Fortunately, we did manage to win our first enterprise deal during COVID, and that was fairly strong confirmation that we could sell this product to other enterprises. So from there, we were able to demonstrate that we were an enterprise solution. But part of the challenge of building from Singapore is it's a small market. There's 5 million, 6 million people here, and it's not a market that's big enough to build, a unicorn if you just focus on this market alone. So you quickly have to build a product for a regional or global market. And we had to really do that from the get-go, which was difficult. And also the fact that in Southeast Asia or Asia generally, it's the biggest market by GDP and population, but it's also in many respects the most fragmented. So as we moved from the SME startup end of the spectrum towards enterprise, we had to adjust our approach from I guess a PLG or product-led growth motion to more of a old school enterprise sales-led motion, which, as you said, is kind of associated with trust and building relationships. So we had to build those relationships, build on the momentum of working with one enterprise customer into multiple enterprise customers. But because it's such a fragmented market, it's very difficult to do that unless you have presence in each of these countries, or you have understanding of how each of those countries like to buy. So what worked really well for us was more of a partner-led model or an ecosystem-led model. We worked with various other software companies, integration and implementation partners who we built trust with directly, and then who in turn would work with our end users. So I guess it's a matter of firstly being, where the customer is, like being where the customer is ready to buy, and the partners are usually in that position. They're already established, trustworthy consultants for our end customers, and by getting into bed with those implementation partners, it's a good way to instantly build trust and expand from Singapore and beyond.
I love that. Okay, so I love this conversation. And Shashank, when we're titling this later on, it is building your unicorn through partners and resellers. It's very important because like I said, even this journey where I have had so many companies that have said, hey, Brian, who do you have like in your portfolio that we can I'm like, they're too poor for you. Like our portfolio too poor for you. And what's going to happen is you're going to be like, well, we have this model and it's going to be like $499 a month. And they're going to be like, oh, if only you could do it for like $72 a month and maybe defer the first 3 months. It's like spinning your wheel now. It does no harm to allocate a little bit of time to be testing your product from ICP. Is disseminating like the greatest amount of info, the people that are facing like the greatest problem on that, who are the ones with the most amount of information, right? And so I love that. I also think what you said, Ben, about like being able to break in through the front door of partners, it's so hard. It's so difficult. Like I was with a guy from NASA, one of the space consultants the other day, and he's like, look, if you're a space company and you think you're knocking on the door of anybody in SpaceX, NASA, or like, good luck. You've got no chance. It is never going to happen. It is always by building a relationship. And the thing about an early stage startup is your greatest enemy is time. It's not even your weapon. It's almost always your enemy, right? You wake up in the morning and within an hour, time is like beating the living crap out of you, right? And you're like, oh my God, emails, phone calls, and who do I call? And so if that's the case, yes, should you spend time developing relationships, doing drip feeds to large enterprises? Of course. But if you can build relationships with 10 partners, and this gets to my next question, which is the value that you could build for them. Because when you go to a partner and you're like, okay, my objective is that this partner is going to give me stuff, right? And the partner is not entering the conversation with that same objective of, oh, I just want to give Ben stuff because he seems like a really nice guy. You got to be going in there with a currency exchange. And so, and especially you're going into a conversation with a currency exchange where the partner has got power here and you have got power there. Yes, you have a product, but they have direct access to the customer. I almost think of it some ways, it's like the agent for, I was listening to something about Shakira this morning. It's like the agent for Shakira, right? One person is the agent for Shakira. The other person is somebody with a product for Shakira. Agent can get lots of products. Products cannot get lots of Shakiras. So how did you build up your value with the partners and how did you approach the meetings with them?
Good question. Broadly, we have 3 categories of partners, I guess, and the approach is slightly different for each of them. So the first one would be the implementation partners I mentioned. So these are system integrators, consultancies who deliver a very large digital transformation for a client, and we are a small part of that. The second would be the resellers or referral partners. So the likes of SAP and Concur and those sorts of organizations that would resell or refer their customers as part of a larger solution. And then thirdly, there are platform partners where we are listed on marketplaces such as AWS, and so these approaches, well, these three kinds of partners necessitate that different approach. So for the implement, are you still there, Brian? Oh, geez.
Yeah, guys, I think we got a little bit of a problem with Ben. We're going to have to try and get him back after. So let me try something else. Fuck. All right, everybody, I'm back. I'm gonna bring Ben back in again, and we're gonna do this again. So, hey
Hey.
Ben, hey man, gosh, dang it, it was connection. I hate that. I hate that. Sorry, buddy. Yours is totally good. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're going to, for anybody who's listening, give us 2 minutes. We're gonna start this again. And we're just going to I'm going to bring Ben directly into it. And then we're going to go through it. Connections okay, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to end this quickly. and we will jump back